Hi, I'm Matt St. Jean, here alongside Jack Riccio for PCTV Sports. Jack, unfortunately, college basketball season's over, champs have been crowned, and it's not the Friars. So let's talk about what happened this year for the Friars, where it all went wrong. And let's start with the non-conference schedule. So at the beginning of the year, find out Emmett Holt, he's done for the year. So right off the bat, you have that injury. Throughout the non-conference, you had Alpha Diallo injured, Malik White injured, Kyron Cartwright suffer injuries. They ended up finishing 9-4. You had tough losses at home against Minnesota, a neutral site loss against Houston, and then road losses at URI and at UMass. So I have to ask, how did the non-conference meet with your expectations coming into the season, and how did it shift them going into the conference schedule?
It really seemed like the Friars underperformed in the non-conference, particularly in the offensive end of the ball. Cartwright did sustain some injuries midway through, but overall, the loss of Holt was a lot more devastating than we expected it to be. Really, they didn't have a quality win in non-conference and squeezed out games against Belmont, Rider, Brown, and Stony Brook. All of these were pretty poor indications of their Big East performance. Now, what was consistent in the non-conference was their defense, and we did see flashes of brilliance from Malik White, like in the game against St. Louis when he had that big three-point performance, and the team went 9 for 10 in MSG that game. A pretty good win against Washington down there too. So the 2K Classic was important, as you mentioned, but overall, pretty disappointing considering that this team was pegged to be a top 4 contender in the Big East and possibly even top 25 coming into the season. They certainly didn't play like it.
Yeah, it seemed like, apart from the 2K Classic, which they won, every big test they had in the non-conference, they failed. So that was not exactly the way they wanted to start the season. Now, Big East play, things turned around a little bit. They finished 5th in the conference, 1 spot lower than they were projected to coming into the season. They finished 10-8 for the 5th consecutive year. You had big home wins against Xavier and Villanova, so 2 top 5 wins. But at the same time, 2 home losses to Marquette and DePaul. So after that, what were your expectations going into the postseason, and how did that change from what we saw before?
I was really surprised by conference play overall, considering how things went in the non-conference. This team started 7-4, including a victory over Xavier and Nova, as you said, where Isaiah Jackson in that stretch was scoring 18 off the bench, and the starters were all producing. Cartwright had a couple games over 25 points, actually including a St. John's performance in Queens, where he scored 21, had 15 assists.
Yeah. Big East opener.
Unbelievable confidence from this team to start Big East play. Things started to slow down a little bit towards the end of the season. A big home loss against Seton Hall.
That weird split game.
I don't know. Is that a scandal? What do we call that?
I have no idea.
We'll just say it was a little bit too slippery to play. So it was in Alumni Hall. They had every advantage. Got within 1 in that game, and Seton Hall able to pull away despite the Friars pretty much having another opportunity at the game. Yeah. And something they needed to win.
And they had 2 very poor performances against Seton Hall, getting swept by them. That's not what you want to see.
But overall, 10-8. Yeah, it's how they finished last year, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Going into the postseason, I expected a first-round Big East exit, possibly a playing game, but overall, I thought we were NIT bound. Just given the way the three-point shooting was, really the offense in general. Defensively, they were solid, but just the way they matched up against Creighton, who was on fire, including a late-season victory over Villanova, it just seemed like the Blue Jays had the upper hand in the first round of the Big East tournament.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Big East tournament. Last year, Providence gets matched up against Creighton in that first game, the 3-6 matchup, come out really, really flat and just never look in the game, first round exit, and I know we were there. That's what we were expecting to see yet again. And in the first half, that's what we got. Team was down 4, battled back in the second half to force overtime. They win the first game in overtime, 72-68. Advance the next day, where they end up facing Xavier, number 1 team in the conference. Go down 17, down big at the half. Looks like it's over. But hey, at least we're going to make the NCAA tournament now with that first win. Battle back, led by Kyron Cartwright in the second half. Force overtime yet again. Win that game in overtime yet again to go to the Big East Championship. And yet again, another similar story. You play number 2 Villanova. Down at the half, battle back. Kyron Cartwright hitting some really clutch shots in the second half of that game. Forced overtime, but then that's where Villanova kind of took over. Mikal Bridges hitting a couple ridiculous shots as they went on to win that game by 10 and take the championship. And then you saw in the NCAA tournament, the Friars get the 10 seed, get matched up against 7 seed Texas A&M, which is really just a poor matchup, and they lost that game by 4. So what do you think went wrong going into the NCAA tournament? What do you think about where the Friars got seeded? I know that was a very contentious point.
It was tough to see them go to, I believe it was Charlotte, and get the 10 seed against a Texas A&M squad who was at one point this year top 5. And that's not for no reason. These big men are some of the most athletic in the nation, and the Friars just had a whale of a time, got out-rebounded by over double digits, and you just saw it. They were completely outmatched in the interior. But going back to the Big East tournament, this was the best basketball that this Friars team played, displaying how good their shooting defense was. Definitely one of the best in the nation, and you saw it against Xavier, especially with Mekhi Ashton Langford, who will go into individual players later, but we gave him a lot of flack this year, coming into the season with pretty heavy expectations, being a 4-star recruit, 35th overall in the nation, and not producing as well as we expected. He came in that game, played the triangle and 2 defense to perfection here against Xavier, and that, I think, was their best game. And that was really their peak. After that, Villanova was just another good performance from the shooting defense, but overall, Texas A&M is not a shooting team. They're a team that gets a lot of offensive rebounds, and the Friars just couldn't keep up.
Yeah, they got 3 starters over 6'9". I mean, that size Providence just doesn't have.
So, and also the only advantage I thought they had in that game was that Texas A&M was missing their senior point guard, so I figured they'd struggle more offensively. They didn't. Only 14 turnovers for the Aggies. It wasn't a big deal for them in the end, and they were able to pull out the win and then eventually get a second-round victory, blowout victory over UNC. Yeah,
so that's kind of those what-ifs now when you look back at the tournament, because the Friars get through that game. You never know what they're going to do in the tournament. There was some room there for them to make some noise, but sometimes you just end up in a tough situation, a poor matchup, and that's what ended up happening this year. All right, so enough about this year. Let's start talking about where we go next year. So you're losing 4 players: Kyron Cartwright, Jalen Lindsey, Rodney Bullock, and Tom Planick, all graduating. But on the flip side, we should be getting Emmett Holt back. He averaged 12.5 points a game last year. DeJour Dickens is supposed to have been redshirted this season. He was a 3-star recruit last year, 7-footer as a center. And then you've got 4 recruits coming in, 2 4-stars, 2 3-stars, David Duke, AJ Reeves, Jimmy Nichols, and Chris Monroe. So a lot of new talent coming in, a lot of turnover. So let's talk about the guys leaving first, this graduating class. What do you think their legacy is here in Providence?
Well, they're the only class that went to the NCAA tournament for all 4 years in their tenure in PC basketball history, I believe. You might have to fact check me on that one, but I'm pretty sure it is of the entire history, and that is, no small feat. And that a lot of it's towards, I'd say, Bullock and Cartwright. Kyron Cartwright wasn't highly recruited out of high school, and we didn't really see flashes of brilliance out of him until his junior season when he got 4th in assists in the nation, and then he developed his jump shot this year to be a really effective player. Unfortunately, he struggled with injuries, but overall, his defense got better, his jump shot got better, and his facilitation ability remained the same. Unbelievable production out of him this season. Also, Rodney Bullock, 3 straight years of just very solid offensive production.
He's not a dominating force, but he's a guy that you could always trust to finish around the rim, and he's the guy that could finish the plays Cartwright started.
Right, and Bullock and Lindsey, what you saw last year is what you got. You're not going to see a marquee improvement, but they're key players. They're impact players, and for me, Rodney Bullock, every time he stepped in that court, he made a difference. Same with Jalen Lindsey. I think he developed his game a little bit as well, just on the defensive side of the ball, getting more rebounds, being more active, hustling more. But his big improvement came between his sophomore and junior seasons when he improved his 3-point shooting from 26% to 47%, becoming an absolute weapon in the Ed Cooley offense, because Coach Cooley always needs a shooter on the floor, which actually allows him to transition to these new players where we have no idea who the shooter is going to be next season.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into our next question. You look at the guys that we're losing. You're losing about 35 points a game, just over 12 rebounds a game. How do you replace that production, and not just production, how do you replace that talent and those roles on the floor with new guys coming in?
Well, I think, first and foremost, Emmett Holt coming back is going to help a lot. As long as he is fully healthy and confident in his offensive ability. We saw it towards the end of last year how effective he was becoming. not only on the interior, but from the perimeter. And a kind of a swing forward, a post-perimeter player like Holt, sort of resemblant of Ben Bentel years ago, can make a huge difference in this flex offense that Coach Cooley likes to run. And really just spreading the floor and allowing slashers like Diallo and maybe Ashton Langford if he's out there to really do their thing and spread the floor. And then just maybe a spot-up shooter. We're hoping that would be AJ Reeves. From what I've seen in film, I like his quick jump shot. He's able to set his feet, seems pretty comfortable shooting off the ball, off the dribble, but also, catch and shoot as well. I think he'll be a pretty good offensive asset, and hopefully he can find himself in the starting lineup next year. And then Nate Watson down low. He's just your solid anchor. If you can get a one-on-one matchup, I'll take him 70 or 80% of the time. So I think this can be a really, really strong offense if they get that one off-the-dribble shooter. And I hope that's AJ Reeves.
Yeah, and I think that's where there's some questions for next season because you got Reeves coming in as a freshman. You have high expectations for guys. You're going to need him to step in right away and fulfill a role in this offense. So what are your expectations for this incoming freshman class? Where do you think that they'll fit in like the offense? Do you think any of them are going to be starting?
I already mentioned AJ Reeves. Yes, I think Reeves right now is in my starting lineup if he shoots the way I expect him to. David Duke, defensive specialist, athletic, very good handling the ball. I don't really know about his passing ability yet, but usually it takes about 2 years to learn an Ed Cooley offense. So I don't see him starting. I see Malik White taking the helm at the point. I actually liked what I saw out of him this year. He got less minutes, but that's kind of what happens when you break your leg. So.
And also Kyron Cartwright's ahead of you. It's
right.
Kind
overall,
of break through there.
Overall, I think he'll be a pretty big impact player in the starting five. David Duke has a lot to learn in this Ed Cooley offense. We saw it with Ashton Langford. You can't just throw a freshman into the wrath, into the chaos, really, that the flex offense is because it's complicated. It's nothing like they run in AAU, where it's kind of just run and gun and pick and rolls and all that stuff. A lot of off-ball screens, a lot of just sort of understanding the movements and making the right pass at the right time. I think Malik White has a lot more experience. He'll have to emerge from his cocoon and become a butterfly as the point guard because they are always the top and marquee players in any Ed Cooley team. So going back to David Duke, he's going to have to wait a little bit, maybe even 2 years to get in that starting lineup.
Yeah. So what do you think that starting lineup is for the first game next season? We don't even know who they're playing yet, so this is very premature. But if you had to take a guess right now.
I would say Nate Watson at the 5. Yeah, he'll get competition from Khalif Young, but I think overall he's just more talented. At the 4 is Emmett Holt, if he's healthy and he comes back. Number 3 would be Alpha Diallo. Number 2, AJ Reeves. Or Mekhi Ashton Langford, depending on what kind of look we get from Coach Cooley. I would prefer Reeves, he's a better shooter. And Malik White. And hopefully Malik White has a better three-point game.
So where do you think Isaiah Jackson fits into that then?
Isaiah Jackson's always going to be a role player. We've seen him in the starting lineup last year and this year, and usually it's a disaster. So, I mean, just not going to sugarcoat it. He is so much better as a role player. We've seen
off
flashes,
the bench energy guy.
Right. We've seen flashes of brilliance from him, but next year we're looking for consistency in production, overall offensively, but also he's a very valuable defensive asset. And if he can put in 22 to 25 minutes a game, if not more, off the bench, he could be absolutely huge for a pretty deep Friar squad next year. Also, defensively coming off the bench would be DeJour Dickens. He's also someone I'm interested in seeing. Carson DeRozier's is someone who reminds me of him. And that was the 2014 squad who won the Big East championship.
Yeah,
and if he can defend like DeRozier's did down low, that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, I know firsthand how good DeJour Dickens is on defense. I was playing down in Peterson the other day. The basketball team was there. Put up a nice easy layup, and I see DeJour Dickens come out of nowhere and swat it 30 feet off the court. So maybe he'll be doing that a lot in the Big East next year. 2 players that you didn't mention, 2 incoming freshmen,
Yep.
Jimmy Nichols, Chris Monroe, both 3-stars, but I know the team is very high on them. It feels like they're better than the 3-star rating that they've gotten, both forwards. So guys that you could see as depth players at the wing, they can play at the 3 or the 4 and really help out on offense or defense.
Nichols and Monroe, really for them, I see them getting redshirted. Just with the experience on the squad that's already there, I don't really see why they would get minutes over someone like Young or Edwards or Jackson.
Yeah,
it's just there's so many assets on this team already. They're gonna have to wait their turn, just like Duke. They're coming onto a stacked squad, and hopefully they have the patience to stick around and get better and develop in this head Cooley system go to another tournament.
Yeah, we've seen how well the red shirting guys coming in works at Villanova. In our own conference, winning the championship, Dante DiVincenzo with that great performance, and he was a red shirt his first year. They've used that well, so maybe that's something we'll see at Cooley start to use a little bit more. But for Jack Riccio, I'm Matt St. Jean, and we'll probably talk to you guys later in the fall once the schedule is out, once we're closer to the season, and we know a little bit more about what's going on. But this has been PCTV Sports. Thanks for watching.